What's up, everybody? I'm back with another
Starting to,
person who is going to college to become an economics major or whatnot, so I'm just going to pass it to him so he can introduce himself. So go for it, Doug.
Sup? I'm a nerd who likes to read a lot, and don't trust me on anything I say. I'm not an expert for form.
I mean, you probably know a little bit more about economics than I do,
Don't
because
trust me. Don't trust the man speaking.
the man who's speaking, well, okay. Um, all right, so, I mean, I guess just go kind of into, like, your basic economic ideology, like, what do you kind of believe in? What's your expertise, I guess? Are you going to school for it and whatnot?
Oh, so pretty much what I'm looking at is like inequality and like the nature of like debt is what I've been looking into a lot. So I've been reading like mostly like Mark Blythe, Nassim Taleb, Milton Friedman, and a lot of these in like Thomas Piketty, and trying to understand like how does poverty like work.
Wait, poverty?
Yeah, poverty.
Okay, okay. So you are, I would say you would be in favor of like some sort of wealth distribution, right? Is that what it's called?
Well, oh yeah, yeah, I'm generally in favor of wealth distribution. I think it generally because if I like the equation and like you put a little bit of energy into like a system that doesn't have much, it's going to have a huge benefit. Now UBI, I do am very much in favor of UBI. If I want to go in, if you might, if you don't
Oh
not
yeah,
mind
go
me
for it.
going
I
into
mean, I
that.
really, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm interested in UBI, but one of the things I'm really worried about is like I think people are going to underestimate the inflationary effects of it. Like I'm still in favor of it, and I think inflation actually should be a bit higher because of effects on debt.
Right.
But we should be looking at like we should be really trying to figure out like what the inflationary effects of UBI would be because poor people tend to spend much money, and this is pretty much what you're doing when you're giving a bunch.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind
But
of a good thing for a capitalist economy
oh yeah,
when
no,
you
it
have
is good.
when you
I'm just
give
saying,
poor
like,
when the poor
of
have more money
course,
because they spend more?
yeah. Well, you have aggregate. Well, like, we might not. Yeah, it's aggregate demand, but like what I'm concerned about is with that is that we're going to underestimate the inflationary effects, and then people are going to respond too negatively to that, and that's going to like cause like people to like do austerity, which is really bad.
Like we're seeing in Greece and Spain right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
Um,
much, it's
Well, I mean,
hey.
uh, isn't the thing with Greece and Spain that they've had a history of like not working hard or whatnot? Like
No, that's
Germany.
bullshit. Like, this is like a fucking banking. I'm not the expert on this, but like, if you want to read someone who's really good and talks a lot about this, it's he wrote a book
Wait,
called Austerity.
wait, hold on. How does that sound like Shrek?
No, like his voice,
Oh, okay.
like he sounds like Shrek because he's like has like he's a deep voice with the Scottish like trashy Scottish accent.
Damn, why you gotta throw shit at my dog? Mike Myers, right? Mike Myers.
Oh fuck,
All right,
Myers. He has
so
a love guru,
oh,
and he left in shame. Fuck.
wait, he left in wait, what? I'm not aware of this. He left in shame.
Like I mean the love guru is garbage, and I think that was the last movie he made.
Oh yeah, I fucking remember that movie. That was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. You can never forgive someone for the.
Right. So actually something I wanted to ask you, like an economic theory that I kind of thought that I'm like really in favor in, and me not knowing how economics works very well, I kind of want to get your opinion, probably someone who knows a little bit more. So I kind of always had the mindset that if we decrease spend necessary spending, so like let's say for healthcare or health insurance or for college, if we make those two things free, then that's going to put more money in the pockets of like the middle class and even the lower classes, and then they're going to have more money to spend on things that can actually benefit the economy. Like,
Yeah, I
TVs,
mean,
cars.
like for example, like where do you think like I'm gonna look it up, but like pretty much like the major forms of debt are like medical debt, like
s- Yeah, and student
mortgages
loans is also a big one,
and
right?
student loans. If you like, I'm gonna look it up, but like composition of
Yeah. I mean, the only
like
the
you,
only thing that you said there that I probably wouldn't be in favor of like ending is probably mortgages, but
but
you
you
know.
don't, but yeah, I agree with you on that because those are
Yeah.
assets. But the other ones, those aren't necessary. You could easily get rid of those debts, and they would remove dead weight, and they would money into the economy pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of always thought of like student loan debts and medical like or insurance, paying for insurance or health insurance is kind of just like a wasted money on the economy. Like, is that a misconception that I have, or is that like kind of
What could you repeat that?
yeah, like so I always kind of had the conception that student loan debts or like having to pay money to student loans is just kind of like money that's not going really to the economy. And same thing with like health insurance. Is it not that does it not benefit the economy like the same as if I was to like go out and buy a new car or a new TV?
Well, like when you buy the car, you're buying a product, and that people are going to produce more of the product. Because
Okay,
you produce, so you need, so it's better to have consumption rather than like these like interest driven like expenditures.
so debt.
But you also
Oh,
need those expenditures to make loaning stable, and that allows you to have a liquid asset. And
okay,
that
so
allows for loaning, and that allows for more, and that allows for better distribution of resources. But you need to also balance that out with
right.
preventing like interest from consuming someone's
Yeah,
like.
because I mean, even if we got rid of student loan debt and health insur or health medical debt, we would still have plenty of debt and whatnot. Like, credit card debt is massive in America, like you said earlier, mortgages. So I mean, I don't think taking out these two debts would probably, take away from what debt does and the benefits that debt has to the economy, right?
I mean, generally, I think like you get debt because you want to have because you're access, and if you have access without paying for it, that means yeah, it's one less thing you have to spend money on. I think it would generally be good, and it's pretty cheap relative to like government expenditures and the output it would produce. Like
And
it's.
oh, sorry, sorry, go finish your
I'm
thought.
just gonna. I'm done. Actually, I'm gonna retract the statement. I'm gonna look up a few estimates first before
All right.
I defend.
All right, go for it. And then something else I wanted to get your opinion on. I've heard this a few times, and I kind of like the more I hear it and the more like I kind of think about it, the more it makes sense to me. So, in the Roaring Twenties, that was kind of like a prerequisite or the cause of the Great Depression, where wealth inequality was so high, where the top people were like just loaded and hardly even had to work, and they just had gobs of money, and then the poor were all like kind of fucked, and then that kind
That
of
is a that is an extreme.
that is a what? I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
Oh, sorry. That's I don't know much about it, but I know just from some basics. I know, like for example, you're ignoring stuff or ignoring stuff the credit like there's like in 1929 I think debts moved from like the French from the Germans were paying their debts to the Americans before they were paying it to the French. But then in 1929 I think
Well, yeah,
it
yeah,
switched to
yeah,
the
yeah. Oh, yeah.
French.
I'm not denying that. Like
And there's a
yeah, the war reparations was probably like the biggest economic
but
factor, right?
well kind of
Kind of. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, you just go ahead
but
and
like
explain it.
no, I don't know anything. Just I'm just start I don't like
Oh,
really
I
know.
mean,
I shouldn't really.
I've just heard people compare the Roaring Twenties and that economic era to like how we are kind of right now, how the top or the wealthy are very, 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 very wealthy, and then the poor are just kind of like fucked, and they're continuously being fucked, and
Well,
then
pretty much one of the big things that happened in the 19 in the nine in the it was actually deflation. Deflation is what started to kick off a lot of the problems in the 19 in the late 20s, early 30s. You know that, right?
um, I've heard that. I think
Yeah,
I've heard that before. Go for it.
so
Sorry.
yeah, comparing like the 19 if we're comparing it to 19 26, I'm just looking at this book right now United States. I'm looking at the chapter so yeah, I'm looking at page 303. Pretty much, there's a graph in here which pretty much shows like how like the how like when you like decrease the monetary supply, it had like huge like deflationary effects on the economy and severely.
Right, and I think that's like a weird misconception that like I had up until like maybe a couple years ago is like inflation bad, deflation no, yeah, deflation good, inflation bad, but
Deflation good if you're a creditor, deflation bad if you're a debtor.
oh, okay, all right.
So if I have $10,000 in debt, would I rather go up or go down?
If you have $10,000 in debt, you'd rather the value of the currency go down, right?
Yeah, because think about it. I mean, that means you own the same amount of debt in numbers, but in the value of that debt goes down. Therefore, it's easier for you to pay it off.
Right. Then vice versa if you're a yeah.
Deflating, yeah.
So typically inflation helps the
And
poor, and then
yeah, and also like keep in
deflation
mind like
helps
the
them.
1920s, like in the 19 was like they had insane amounts of debt in the 1920s.
Well, do you see parallels to what happened in the 1920s and then what's going on right now?
Uh, yeah, but I just don't. I'm. You can never figure out what's the fucking next bubble's gonna be. Like, I mean, like you don't have a full data. You'll never have a full data set. So
Right. I
therefore,
mean, but
you
but
never
the
see
whole thing is that
extremities.
like we still like try to kind of predict it and try to like try to like see what's going on and use history and use what happened previously to kind of predict what's going on now, right? Isn't it?
I mean, like I think that's actually kind of pointless. Like you can't. You can only make yourself like turbulent.
Well, I
Like
mean,
you can only make you can make yourself, for example, like you never want to go. For example, one like tricks you can do is you do like I'm reading the anti-fragility, and pretty much what he was talking about was like if you put 10% stocks and 90% safe stocks, you can the maximum you can lose is about like 10%. But if you put in all medium stocks, you have a chance of going bankrupt.
right. Yeah, but then you
Yeah.
also have a chance of making more money. Isn't that the whole like stock market thing?
Well, the point is that you want to play the extremes rather than like trying to play the middle. Middle is one of the points.
Oh, okay, so you either want to be really safe or really risky. Playing the
Like you
middle
want to
is
be
kind of
both
pointless.
really risky in some places and really so like it's pretty much you can so like for and I diversified right and like 90% my 90% goes down like 20% value, something insane, okay? But
Right.
that 10%, that really risky one, actually benefits from the huge boon. So I'm able to make my money back and survive.
All right. Wanted to hit on another topic. So do you know what's going on with China, like economically?
Hell no. No
Okay.
one does. I don't understand the fucking
Well,
shadow
no, I
banking
mean,
there.
okay. So have you heard the story that they're artificially building housing and like they have massive like cities that are just ghost towns because they're trying to artificially
I think
inflate their GDP?
like I'm trying to find a I can look that up, but I'm not even sure if that's 100% like
Well,
um
I think I saw a Vice report on that where they kind of did that, and then from my understanding is what they were trying to do is they were trying to artificially inflate their GDP by just building housing in like big gigantic cities, and then just worry about like people buying them or moving into them later. And then what's going on is that they're just creating a gigantic housing bubble that is just bound to like pop.
you don't move to a place before there's jobs.
Yeah, but the whole thing is that typically jobs go and then housing comes up, but the Chinese government has just been artificially building housing and then using that to like represent that their GDP is still growing because their GDP growth has slowed recently. So they were kind of trying to use that to like continuously show like, oh look, our GDP is still growing.
Like, the one thing I do know about China is that they really one of the major things they care about is like full employment, and so that's why like their products are so cheap.
Right.
It's because they places they would rather really
I
because
mean,
they'll just export
yeah, like
after date. But
what
soon your prediction I have is that you're going to see China's like internal consumption go up a lot. You're going to see like Chinese goods generally increase in price.
okay.
See, like my guess and just looking into my crystal ball of being a jackass with no real power or information is I think it's going to probably be like Ethiopia, like
Wait, what?
Nigeria,
Oh,
and like
okay,
Tunisia is
okay.
going to be like a financial hub. Like
Okay.
they're going to move the production's going to move there mostly.
So you think that Africa is going to be like I've heard this a lot where it's like this next generation or this next like century or whatever
Well, everyone's
how
going to just feed off the corpse of Congo. That's always how that's just how it
right.
is.
I mean, but like yeah, isn't hasn't Africa been like economically like that's like a
Hey,
huge
Rwanda's been
meme,
doing
isn't it?
great of eating off the corpse of the Congolese.
Wait, who has?
So, pretty much, like, you know what I'm talking about or no?
I just didn't hear you said who like who's feeding off the corpse of the Congolese?
Rwanda.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know a whole lot about Africa, which that's like a huge
Uh,
gap in my knowledge when it comes to geopolitics.
so in Rwanda, it's really cheap to mine like rare. From how I understand it, it's really cheap to mine rare earth minerals. Then pretty much you can have open mines without much like high tech production. Okay,
Right.
So pretty much what it does is that these rare earth minerals we mined by like rebel groups to fund their revolutions and buy AKs and weapons and shit. And then
Yeah.
pretty and then pretty much like from how I understand it, like Rwanda, pretty much is like one of the major shippers. Like I'm gonna double check into that because I
No, I believe you, Doug. Like,
no like I
yeah.
don't trust myself. It's
Oh.
not about you. It's about me.
Okay, I mean that's typically good when I'm talking to someone who's like, oh, I gotta make sure I'm not just talking out of my ass instead of just talking out of your fucking
No,
ass.
no. So like
So that like my biggest thing is I don't know, I've talked to like a couple I guess race realists recently, and they like to really pretend that like the reason that Africa's kind of fucked is like I don't know, they like to go back to like
oh no, it's not because you like had the entire like bureaucratic infrastructure just fucking upend and leave and completely destroy like how the
yeah, no,
system's
like yeah,
organized.
that's my defense. It's like usually, and like I talked to someone yesterday, and he was all like, "Oh, well, yeah, no, history is definitely a factor, but it's also like race and whatnot." I'm just like, well, I mean, I don't really see that. I mean, it's pretty clear that you can just point to colonialization and be like, that's probably the biggest reason why like a lot of these economies are just fucked is because the European uh, countries came in and were like, okay, we just want to extract the resources. We don't want to build universities or we don't want to build schools or hospitals or roads other than to the ports and to the mines, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to invest in the people. So
So, I mean, I guess like the topic I kind of would like to end on, I guess, just to like start wrapping it up. What do you think would be the best way to fix or help the African economy or like African countries? How do you think we should go about that?
um, fuck. I mean I don't fucking know.
All right. Can I give my way? I think would be a good way to do it, and you just tell me if I'm dumb or not. So
My dumbass take, sure.
sure. So I think that if we were to go in and try to help build like schools or even like universities and try to like prioritize education in those areas and try to build a intellectual class or a class that could like help lead or help take control or whatnot. I think that would be kind of good. Also, I think democracy is typically a good way to um, help stabilize a country, but the people in that country have to also want a democracy. It's really not easy to force democracy on a country. That's like was clear in Iraq.
Well, you can't really. Well, the problem is you can't really just upend the system all at once because if you try to upend the system, you don't know. You'll never know the consequences before you do it because you don't understand how interconnected everything is, and
Right.
because you don't understand the actual dynamics of it and how interlocked everything is. You're gonna if you remove one major portion of it, it starts having chain reactions, and you don't. And it's nearly impossible to figure out those effects prior, and we can only use hindsight. And hindsight's not very good
Yeah,
if
hindsight's a
you broke
bitch.
the
Yeah.
no. So like so yeah, like I don't think you need like I say I don't have any suggestions because I don't know like what the repercussions would be, and
I
I
mean,
need a lot of like looking into that
like
before
if
I
you
would
were
even
in
like make a
charge, like would you just kind of be like, okay, like they're kind of starting to do good, like a lot of African countries are starting to do good in the recent years, so we just kind of like support them but not really like try to change much, just kind of like let them continue to
I would
do their
probably
thing.
okay. Here's what I would probably do if I was in charge of the IMF. I would probably restrict austerity based measures. That would be a first good step so that real resources can be distributed easier through the economy.
Okay.
Like and like one of the things I would also probably do is focus on like open border system so that they allow for freedom for free mobility of labor and trade because I think that's generally good for countries
Just
and
in wait, hold on, just in Africa or like just in general?
in general. But if we're talking about free open borders for Africa
Okay.
in this context,
Okay.
so and then also probably like have like a integrated like rail system
Yeah, that
like
would definitely help. Yeah, not just
integrated
right.
travel, also like stabilize, figuring out ways to stabilize the countries. But fuck if I know how to do that.
Yeah, I think another big thing is trying to stabilize currencies and trying to teach the leadership in the countries how to like not completely fuck over your own currency by like massive inflation. Um,
I mm,
but then again, I don't understand like money that
no,
well,
like I'm saying
so.
the issue of inflation is really sometimes inflation can be really good and decrease if you have like a lot of debtors and you're trying to like like reducing the debt,
Right.
distributing the money if you print more. And
Okay. So like sometimes in like strategic inflation can be a good thing
eh,
if done
yeah,
properly. Okay.
don't tell Milton Friedman.
And then like okay, actually two quick things I wanted to get on. So you said you were in favor of like the like kind of like open borders or like free movement of labor. So I
Yeah.
like for instance like with America, I'm in favor of reforming our immigration policy to be more easily accessible. I still believe in like a border. I still believe in like vetting people and making sure that like like we should know who is coming into our country, but also I think that like it shouldn't be very hard to get in if you're willing to work, if you're willing to take up a job and then try to help and benefit our economy, then I'm all for you coming into this country, 100%. I mean, but like, do you
Well,
disagree with it? Like, do you think that there should be a border or whatnot?
no, like I think my personal opinion is that I think that like as long as it is like you don't really I don't even think like background checks are like 100% like I should what am I
Yeah.
gonna say because like it's like personally like I think that like the more open the better and I think like you don't really need restrictions besides like going to get like a long like besides trying to get like a long term like housing or see why you need to be
Yeah.
generally there's of course there's like the risk of like but squirrels are more dangerous than terrorists. Let's
Well, I'm not even talking about that necessarily. I'm more like referring to you sound like someone who'd kind of like support Bernie Sanders, and like Bernie Sanders himself has like came out and like said multiple times like I'm not in favor of open borders, and like with his expanding social policies would probably um not work as well as they would if you like like I said, I'm not saying we should build a wall. I'm not saying we should like keep everyone out. I'm just trying to say that we should still have some sort of a border, some sort of a vetting process. I think it should be a lot less strict and a lot less tedious than it is right now, but I still think that should be in place. And I guess that's where we would disagree. And I just wanted to point out, a disagreement we have, I guess. I'm just going to let you have the closing words. Anything you want to add? Or one last question you want to ask me or whatnot? I'm just going to pass it to you.
um
Hello? I can't hear you.
sorry. You want me? Okay, I'll fine.
Yeah, no, you can close if you want. Or if you don't have anything else to say, you just be Gucci.
Yeah, I'm Gucci. I just don't really have much to say.
All right. Well, I mean, that was a pretty good conversation about economics, I guess. Um,
No, was it? Sorry about being boring and shit.
No. I mean, no. It was a pretty decent conversation. It was a nice, quick one, so I don't have to spend 4 hours fucking editing it, which is nice.
The major, so like don't talk. Trust me on anything I say.
Well, I would say you very clearly know more about economics than I do
Like
because
I
you
tried my
are,
best.
yeah, like, and that's good that you're not just talking out of your ass. Well, I mean, other than that, I'm just gonna wrap it up. So until next time, dogs. Peace.
It's my dog. Yeah. It's my dog show.